you work with Relief Mental Health, and the Mind Solution is what it's called. How does that work? You have an extensive toolkit.
So I am a therapist with Relief Mental Health, and as an organization, we do offer a lot of different treatment modalities in order to treat depression and anxiety, OCD, things of that nature. And so I get to be a really cool piece of that puzzle where some of my clients will engage in those other treatment modalities. Some of them don't, but it's a really cool approach to treating depression, anxiety, etc. Because we're not just giving out a medication and okay, I'll see you next time. We're not just doing talk therapy. We're not just doing these things. We have the ability to do all of these things together. So med management is part of our menu options, so to speak. Yeah. Talk therapy, as I mentioned. And then we do also have the ability to offer transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS for short. And then we also provide ketamine treatments as well. Both of those are pretty up and coming. There's probably more folks out here who don't really know exactly what that's all about. And maybe that's a whole nother podcast.
Well, I don't
Maybe
know.
that's a whole nother episode.
Well,
But
it might be.
yeah, it really can be. It really can be because there's so many ins and outs of it all. But my role as a therapist is I get to be a piece of what's really important work for a lot of folks who are looking to address their anxiety, address their depression, address their OCD, among other things. And so that's my role. I'm one of the therapists at Relief. And so I work with a lot of people. And you mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy. That's my wheelhouse. I dabble in a lot of things, but cognitive behavioral therapy is really where I camp out most of my time. I feel like that's, it's my language. So
Very cool.
yeah.
I was thinking that perhaps because I felt like when I was preparing and looking, there's a lot of different spaces where we could talk about, and
Hmm.
I know we want to stick with anxiety and depression. I know that. I know my listeners would love to hear about if you have any ways, practical ways, cognitively, that they can begin to work on mindset or how they work with depression. How would you encourage someone who can't quite get to the therapist office, but how could you get them to kind of just move forward with anxiety or depression? And then also you talk about stages of change, which I think is really, really important. That was intriguing to me. I read through it and I thought, oh yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then of course, I would be interested in talking about the transcranial
The transcranial magnetic stimulation,
yes,
yes.
and ketamine, but that can be done at a different time. I don't know, you can answer this, but people who have depression and who have anxiety, is there something that happens in their life experience that creates this pathway for them?
I believe so. Yeah, yeah, I do. I believe that, and I'm going to go kind of old school here, back to my Psych 101 days, really, where, we learn a lot about the mixture of nature versus nurture and how who we are today and how we experience life today has a lot to do with a mixture of how I was brought up, maybe even some of my genetics and things that I was born with, right? As well as that mixed with the life experiences, the things that have happened to me, things that happen to us in our life. I'm going to use the word trauma as, and maybe they weren't all traumas, but things that happen to us in our lives actually wires the brain. Right. So if you imagine what we all know the brain to look like, it's all of those different, basically like noodle looking, right? I always picture like, oh, those are the pathways. And everything that happens to us in our lives, as well as the genes that we were born with, as well as the things that we were, taught by parents and our cultures, et cetera, create those pathways. And the traumas that occur, that car accident, that major breakup, whatever it is, the abuse, whatever it is going to, the brain will then create a new pathway for the purpose of protection. Okay.
So for the purpose of protection, the brain creates a new pathway.
Mm-hmm.
I would maybe add to your list of this mixture. We all have a sense that we want to control something. So if we
Yeah,
in our life maybe haven't experienced trauma, but we don't have control over something.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so when I talk about change, so like I said, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. Really, what's at the root of that, the meat of cognitive behavioral therapy is learning how to make effective changes. Okay. And so when we learn how to do that, we actually do have the ability. It's called neuroplasticity. We have the ability. Now, I'm not a neuropsych, so don't, but we do have the ability to, okay, so after the car accident, my brain decided to like protect me by making this pathway in it. Oh, okay. Now I'm afraid to drive anywhere and I'm gonna, white knuckle the steering wheel and just, I can make changes in my behaviors. I can make changes in even my belief systems. I can make changes in how I think about that accident that will help to reroute those pathways to now I'm at a point where I'm a bit more comfortable behind the wheel.
Okay, so here's a question for you. And
Yes.
because I really like what you just said, we have an experience
Mhm.
and then someone else's job, who is you, says, "Oh, I hear you. I
Yes.
hear you. I see you. You matter. I maybe can help you learn how to rewire something." So I was talking to somebody the other day. This was so interesting. And they said, I came from a family of divorce. And they said, and now in my life as an adult, I'm terrified of
Marriage.
relationship because the
Yes.
longevity of like, and so it's like, they said, well, someone's going to say to me, I've had relationships say, because they're older, and they said, I've had people say, I'm never leaving you. And they're not here,
And they've left.
right?
Right.
And they've
Right.
left. And it's not because they got married, it was because they were, a boyfriend who it just didn't work out. And they're like, well, how do I begin to allow myself at this age of 50 to
Hmm.
allow myself to love and to feel like we're not going to get a divorce and maybe even reframe that. Do you have any offerings about something like that?
So that's an interesting aspect of the kind of work that I like to do with my clients
Mm,
because while I can talk all day long about, well, you have the ability to change your mindset on things, et cetera, at the end of the day, nobody has a crystal ball. And I have to be honest with my clients about that so that they can be honest with themselves about that fact as well. Nobody has a crystal ball. Your therapist isn't sitting here telling you that she knows exactly how things are going to pan out for you because she doesn't, right? However, we spend time working on, well, what can I do, right? So we were talking about depression, anxiety, things that happen to us that cause us to feel these kind of things. At the age of 50, I'm feeling, discouraged in my love life, whatever might be the case. Okay, so there's a side of the coin where we can do some work around what can I do about the situation that is causing me to feel the way that I'm feeling. And as the therapist, I'm going to walk you through identifying those things for yourself because it might be different for you than it would be for me and etc. So I'm going to work with you on identifying, well, what is the can? What can I do about these things? And then we will spend time because I would be remiss if I didn't spend time with my clients in this area of, well, what if it doesn't go that way? What if you do, this example that you gave, what if you do start to date somebody again and you start to, have feelings and you get to that point, but well, it didn't work out, we broke up, etc. Okay. So when we're in that type of space, we need to be willing to have the mindset of, even though this was discouraging or even though this was sad, maybe even in certain devastating, even though these emotions are very strong, uncomfortable and undesired, hey, I can still get through that though.
Right, because somewhere along the line, when you have seen the accident, experienced something bad, had a divorce or you're a child of a divorced parents,
Hmm.
you've seen something that you don't, that hurts, that
Right,
activates pain. And then there's this weird gap or disconnection to how to repair that.
right.
And so, what you're saying here is when you can say something like, even though
Yes.
I feel these feelings, and even though the emotions are heavy, I am open
Mhm.
to a
I like that word.
little bit
Yes.
of
Yes.
learning. You wouldn't just throw someone into a situation and give them big words that feel really vulnerable. You would be offering like, come on over here. We've got something. We're going to treat you very carefully and kindly.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Yes. I use a lot of metaphors and analogies in my work, and I kind of, chuckle with my clients and call them Jisms, and it's funny, but
I'd love
but
to
one of
hear some.
the one of the Jisms that I do mention to my clients is, again, I'm a change agent. So if you're coming to me for therapy, I'm your therapist if you're willing to work through some of these changes and transitions. If you're not, if you don't want to, hey, no, no problem. But
Right.
maybe I'm not your therapist, right? Does that make sense? So I use this analogy where I talk about getting into the pool. I am not the therapist who's going to push you into the deep end of the pool. I'm not going to force you into anything. I'm not going to give you that shock. But in order for our therapeutic relationship to, I guess, work well, for lack of, just to be blunt about it, I do ask my clients to be open
Open.
to putting the toe into the water and then eventually the foot and then coming down those steps. Most pools have the steps
Yeah.
and getting yourself into the water. So I'm not going to push you. We're not
Right.
going to go diving here, but we are going to get into the water. And that's all that I ask.
Okay. So we dip our toes in, then
Yeah.
our half our foot. Now we got our ankle. We're up to
Yep.
our leg. Now we're kind of in the water.
Uh-huh.
And then someone says, change is uncomfortable.
Yep.
So there's a recognition, and this is where I mean, I have four adult kids. My own self. It just
Mhm.
change can hurt, and it can be especially if you have anxiety. I find that trying to renew my mind is a very difficult task when the narrative is cycling and rolling and trying to not jump out of the pool because the narrative is like, this is unsafe, this is crazy. Like it's crazy how that works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And it is almost, even though I use that as an analogy, that the irony of it is that in real, actual physical life,
Yep.
I'm the slowest person to get into an actual pool of water. And if my family is listening to this, they'll laugh because in the summertime, we put the pool up and it's great. It's this lovely thing and it's wonderful. But I am the slowest person because of that very reason. It's uncomfortable to my body. The water is cold and I'm not adjusted. I don't know what it is. Maybe, maybe I'm normal, maybe I'm not. I don't know. But it's just the irony of what you're talking about is yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. But once I'm in there, I'm living my best life. Once I'm in there, I'm feeling so on the other side of that discomfort is always going to be adjustment.
Mm, very good.
There will always be adjustment on the other side of it. There will always be. And then we find ourselves comfortable in that space.
Yes, because this is also something that you would speak to too. When
Mhm.
you're sharing with someone about the can. So you said, "Can I do?" Well,
Mhm.
again, you're going to lead someone, "What can I do?" Now they're willing to dip their toe in, but they haven't done that yet. And there's a step there. And
Mhm.
then you give them a step and they honor the step. They hear it, they internalize it, they feed it back. Okay, that felt okay. I think I could put my toe in. And then what can you do next?
Yes.
I can put my heel in. Now, what can you do next? Now I find myself, weirdly enough, I'm up to my knees, right? Like our can
Yes.
change with the information that you are offering as a next step. And
Right.
we oftentimes, our brains get tricky because they're like, no, any change is crazy. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can is actually very workable.
Right. And going back to that whole, you know, changing the routes of my brain, changing all of that working, that wiring in my brain. Well, every single step of this process reiterates to my brain that I I am doing this, right? And so with every step comes that much more confidence, and again more confidence, and the confidence is compiling on top of itself, so that when you're at the point of having yourself, I don't know, thigh deep, maybe even torso deep, you're that much more confident in your ability to do the change, to do the thing, than you were back when it was just your toe.
Oh, yeah. I just wrote here as you were saying that, from impossible to confident to do the thing.
Hmm.
Because I would say cycling narratives are a really hard thing for me. And the cycling narrative, it cycles, so it feels impossible because
Right.
I don't feel in control, which then equals, for me, it's impossible to get rid of the cycling narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It
Okay.
feels impossible. It sure
That
does.
sure does.
Yeah.
So, as you work with someone who has depression, who's experiencing depression,
Hmm.
or experiencing anxiety, do you lead them to the water in different ways?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's so what would that look like? So that's basically we come to the root of what's sparking that depression, right? And so some of it's maybe twofold, maybe even multiple fold, where it's I'm feeling depressed right now because I recently lost a loved one. That's very acute. That's very, I'm going to say the phrase on the surface, and I only mean that because it's just happened, is what I'm referring
Oh,
to.
okay, that's
As
really
opposed to, right, as opposed to I'm feeling depressed because I've been depressed most of my life. I've been depressed most of my life because when I was 10 years old, there was all of this bullying going on, and I grew up in an abusive household, and I watched mom and dad argue, like all of that deep rooted stuff. See the difference
I do.
between, right, even though I used as drastic of an example as I lost a loved one, there's a difference in that. And so when person comes into my office for therapy, yes, I would lead them to the water in a different way, depending on, first, we're going to look at what's most pressing right now today. Because if you just lost a loved one, what you're experiencing right now is most likely, maybe there's a decline in your daily functioning as a result, which needs to be addressed pretty quickly. Maybe there's a decline in your ability to work, which needs to be addressed fairly quickly. We don't want to compile that issue. Maybe the loss of your loved one is impacting your marriage or your relationship, and so we want to address that fairly quickly. Again, because we don't want to compile the issue because now, no, right? So that's one way. Then the other way is, and we probably will do this over a course of several years, a handful of years in therapy, because we've gotten through all of that. Okay, I feel better, I feel healed from my loss, etc. Now, okay, I'm still, I still do have some bouts of depression, and then we go another trip to the water, to use my analogy and
Sure,
continue with
right.
that. We go, okay, so all the stuff that you've been carrying with you most of your life, you want to unpack that now? Most of the time, the answer is actually yes. Okay,
Mm,
start
yes.
back with the toe all over again.
Yes, back to the toe all over again. However, would imagine that you've experienced this with your clients where if in one area they've been in the water,
Hmm.
they would be more likely to go back into the water without as much hesitation as the first time.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes, I would
Yeah.
agree with that. Again, because of that confidence. See, here's what's happening. All below the surface, bubbling under all of everything that we're talking about. Like I said before, what's happening is confidence is being built up. Confidence and security and even self-esteem, all of these things are being woven and built while you're doing that work of healing, whatever it is that's caused the depression in the first place. And we're using depression as an example, but same is true for anxiety if we were treating anxiety or whatever else. So what's happening below the surface is you're weaving that for yourself, and it's getting stronger and stronger. Okay, so intermixed with all of this work, you're going to hear me say, are you acknowledging that right there? Are you acknowledging and celebrating what you're building and creating? And yes, therefore, what you said is absolutely true. The next round comes with less hesitancy because they've seen themselves come from point A to point B once. I'm ready to go. I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's do
Yeah.
it again for this one, and let's do it again for that, and this and whatever else. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just saw, as you were talking, an image came to my mind that
Hmm.
when you say you're weaving
Yeah.
confidence and self-confidence and these maybe you have as what's being woven is calmness or
Mhm.
learning to regulate your body in some way,
Regulate your body,
right?
your emotions. Absolutely.
Well, in my view, that creates a little net. So
I
you
was
could
seeing that too.
that is so
Exactly.
cool. You could be in the middle of the ocean
Yes.
and a net is created so that you can feel like you
Hmm.
aren't ever gonna drown.
Right.
And that's
Right.
really the power of the confidence and that nurturing of and caring for yourself. This is all about self-love, So when I went to my therapist, and she and I got an appointment next week, by the way, but I know it's my regular check-in. But things happen, and I was thinking, okay, well, why am I going to see her? Because you don't. I would like to have reasons for why I'm going. Just because your life is good doesn't mean that you don't need to have just this extra little support thing, right?
Absolutely, for sure.
And so I think for everyone, there's this interesting thing that happens to me. Having been a mother, having been, I've had a very deep wealth of life experiences, both good, both bad, and it in all the places in between. So you can find yourself slipping every now and then into different things. And so I would say that this net that creates something underneath you, it's it's just loving yourself as you step in and choose to dip your toe in, or like you said, choose to move into and be an agent of change. You are an agent of change as the therapist, but
Mhm.
I am now a second agent of change.
I'm going to argue even a more important agent of change. Not that we're ranking things here, but, and I say that because it's your life. It's
Yes.
your change. It's your decisions. It's your work. It's your growth. And so when you get to that place and you're able to, okay, I'm an agent of change now, that's the torch is passed. The baton is passed. Good. Great.
That's really important, right? Because when we pass the baton, we don't need to, I mean, sometimes we can slip backwards, but the fall isn't as deep, right? Like you do slip a little
Sure.
with just trying. It's almost as if life gives you these chapter quizzes,
Hmm.
and you're like, I was supposed to see if I could learn that.
Yeah, right.
That was the test. Whoops, I missed it.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
It's kind of how it works. So
Hmm.
when you are dealing with chronic pain, you're dealing with trauma, you're dealing with dysregulation,
Yes.
what is the role that you play with those kinds of experiences that people are coming to you and saying, hey, I do see you as a person who can begin to give me strategies, systems, that I can
Mm-hmm.
put into place to help myself move forward. That's a person that's going to go into change at different paces, but they are going to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, chronic pain, all those kinds of things. How do you begin to tease that, to use I mean, that's not probably a good word, but elicit?
Elicit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So all of those things that you've just listed, the one word that comes to mind that they all kind of have in common is okay. So I'm doing some work in chronic pain now as well, developing some stuff with that. But it's when we feel anxious, the overwhelm is I need to take care of all of these things all at once so that my stomach is no longer fluttering. Or you know what I mean? So, and you talk about discomfort, that's the same thing, right? So that my stomach is no longer fluttering, and so that I'm no longer ruminating on this thing that I've been ruminating on. Chronic pain, the overwhelm comes into play because I need this pain to stop now,
Mm.
immediately, and I need to feel back into control again. That's chronic pain. Depression, same thing. I need for these issues to be resolved now. I need to be able to feel more myself now. And so I'm overwhelmed with let me do the things quick. I gotta get. And so to answer your question, it's important for me knowing that you're coming into my office with that big word looming over, overwhelm. I say, stop for a moment, breathe into this, and let's break it down. Chronic pain, you can't expect yourself as a mere mortal human, sorry, to be able to wave the wand and now the pain is gone. But you can, as yourself, this mere mortal human that you are right now,
Yeah.
today,
Yes.
soak in a hot bath, call the doctor to make an appointment to figure out is there a screening that can be done to get to the bottom of this or what have you. You can uh, um, do some physical therapy stretches, things of that nature. Now, it's bigger than that. I don't want to sound like I'm oversimplifying it, but the point that I'm making here is that big word overwhelm looms over all of these things. So let's break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. And that goes full circle back to the what can I do about it now? Because a lot of times with that overwhelm and that strong desire to solve the issue immediately all at once, we forget that, oh, wait a minute. Yes, right now I can pick up the phone and call my doctor and just schedule the appointment. That's all I have to, that's it.
Right.
Oh, I can do that. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can do the small movement. What can I do now means in the present moment.
In the present
That's
moment.
now means now.
Mhm.
Where the overwhelm comes in for many of us is we are thinking about 10 years later, right? We're thinking
Way
about
ahead.
that wedding we're supposed to be at. Well, how can I do this if I have to go there? I mean, it's weird, isn't it?
Right?
Next Tuesday, I got to go. I can barely get out of bed. How am I going to go to that thing next Tuesday? And so, what you're imparting to us is the overwhelm is a messenger.
Mhm.
Overwhelm is saying, I have a message here.
Right.
The message might be bring yourself back into your breath, back into your body.
Yeah.
Now, what can you find right now?
Right now. Right now.
Does this also moves to the how you were talking at the beginning about the synapses and the brain? So when you had this moment where you're feeling overwhelmed, it almost is like it squeezes the flow um so that it almost stops, like you're almost stunned or stuck, or like I have a crazy little example, but we laugh about it to this day because I was cooking tacos and I put the taco shells in the oven. I didn't see that the one taco shell fell, so
Okay.
it caught on fire. So a whole bunch of people were here, and I turn and there's a fire in the oven. So I call Dave, and he comes running, and
Mm,
there was the oven door was ajar, so there's oxygen going in.
sure.
So I get completely overwhelmed. I just start running in the spot in the kitchen. Like I don't actually go anywhere. I'm
Yep.
like, and it was like I never went anywhere. And he's looking at me and he's got his hands on the door. The fire's going out and he's looking at me and I'm just in this overwhelm of who do I go? Where do I go? Where's the fire extinguisher? Where's this? Like the overwhelm was, it actually made me stay
Mm,
in this really weird zone of panic. And so then I think about that when you're talking and going, well, if you're a student and you're overwhelmed with all the schoolwork, how do you look at studying for an exam when you're overwhelmed?
right.
How do you look at how do I get out of this abusive relationship? It's overwhelming.
Right. Right.
How do I get out of the narrative of anxiety? How do I move out of the blanket of depression? How do I move my body from pain to health?
Mm,
These are big, huge, looming things. And you're saying, yeah, but you can.
right.
And we can go this little tiny step. You can do something is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes. You could do something. And again, I don't claim that this is a magic wand. I will often refer to this kind of work as being a lifelong practice. So that's another thing where I have my own journey with anxiety, and I'm very open about that with my clients and with others that I do life with. I have my own journey with anxiety. And one thing that helped me a lot was being able to come to the realization and the understanding that my anxiety is never going to be at zero. And nor should it be, because anxiety serves us a purpose, and that's a different podcast topic. But nor should we be. Also, the same thing with depression. We might never find ourselves completely without depression. Why? Because things are going to happen in life that are going to make you feel sad, and maybe even make you feel sad for a bit longer than anybody wants to be sad for. These emotions are not negative. These emotions serve a purpose, and there's oftentimes, or I should say, there are plenty of experiences where those emotions are perfectly warranted. Okay, so
Wow.
we want to acknowledge the fact that it was warranted for me to feel anxious before hitting record on this topic, on this conversation, on this podcast. It's warranted. It makes sense. It fits there, right? But the lifelong practice that I'm talking about was I in a sheer panic? No. My life wasn't being threatened. I'm not sitting here next to a grizzly bear. I'm not in danger. So that panic would not have been warranted in this situation. Am I today much better equipped to bring my anxiety to a lower level and for a shorter period of time? Today, better than I was 5, 10 years ago? Yes. Why? Because I've been doing this as a lifelong practice every day. And I do it moment to moment as well. Right now, the nerve catalyst is I'm about to appear on a podcast. So that is the anxiety that I am managing now. I don't have to manage the anxiety for a presentation that I'm going to give in a few weeks. That's a few weeks later. And so I will always mention, and this is what's so important about this work, because I'm realizing as we're having this conversation, it could come off as though I'm saying, oh yeah, wave this magic wand and it's all done. It's not. It's a lifelong practice, and we call it anxiety managed, not cured.
Oh my goodness.
It's not anxiety eliminated, it's managed, anxiety managed.
Is it also depression managed?
I believe so.
Because I'm asking because we were just talking about overwhelm So if you have to cure something and find the solution, that's a lot of
Mhm.
pressure.
Mhm.
Managing, wow, that feels easier.
It does. And it makes it realistic because that is what is realistic. It is
Right.
realistic that we're going to find ourselves in situations that are going to cause us anxiety. And, I'm going to be careful with depression managed because there is a there is a difference between depression and sadness. There is.
Can we
Okay.
can we
So
talk about those? Because that would
sure.
be really helpful. Emotions, I'm of the belief that emotions are messages. They
Mm-hmm.
are speaking to us. So
Mm-hmm.
if sadness had a voice, it would say. If anxiety had a voice, it would say. Now it's very, like you said, it's if it's a presentation or if it's getting on a pot, it's going to be a different
Right.
thing. Does that resonate with you? Or
Yes, it does. And I think that actually speaks well to the difference because it's easier to define the specific moments with anxiety than it is to define specific moments with depression. And so I defined it with the examples I gave a moment ago. I can define this moment because I'm nervous that I'm about to walk into the dentist's office. That's very definable, right? Why am I sad? Why am I feeling down? Why am I feeling this listless kind of feeling? And sometimes we might not be able to pinpoint the specific reason. And also, sometimes that feeling, those emotions are residual from a long-term thing because, I mentioned loss of a loved one. You guys, grief and loss is not, it's overlaps with depression. Okay, because if we look at all of the criteria that it requires to be, okay, your therapist is now diagnosing you with depression. There's time frames to it. It's this many months, and it's this over a period of time, and it's impacting you in these different ways. But when we say yes, but also, it's all of those things are to be expected when we're grieving. Okay, and we also know that there is no timeline for grief,
no.
and so, am I depressed or am I grieving?
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And so it's like, well, okay, well, how about this? How about you're feeling the way you're feeling? And so, what can I do about it? I can call up my friend who fails never at making me laugh hysterically until my side hurts. And so I can do that. It seems so small, but yeah.
I find this really intriguing because the grief and the loss are they are they are a, it's all a part of the story or the
Mm,
experience. And it's like you say, sometimes depression just slides in, and you feel all of a sudden like, I don't know how that happened.
yeah.
And then when you start talking to somebody, they say, well, yeah, I really felt I had, I lost so much when I was in high school. Like, I had no friends. I felt
Mhm,
alone. I felt isolated. I didn't feel smart, but I didn't have a choice. I had to do this. Okay, there's some loss in there. There's some
mhm,
grief in there. There's,
mhm.
like, it's not, it's a very beautiful, it's a happiness and disaster at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. And yet, this is how we are feeling lots of times in our lives. How do you, if someone comes to you with depression, what is your beginning step? And of course, you're going to say to me, well, Lori, there's all kinds of things and
Sure.
levels, but let's stay with what you just were talking about. You were talking about grief, like losing someone. Maybe that's where we stay, or we stay with divorce, because then we can say, well, losing someone in a relationship or in a marriage, that will help people.
Yeah.
And then that can kind of pull us into more of a focus about how you would give someone something like a takeaway.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Actually, I think that my first step would probably apply to all of the different presentations of why depression is coming about. It's The first step is to normalize it. It was like, it's what I was saying before. Your feelings are warranted. You're feeling sad, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling, these heavy feelings because of your past history and childhood traumas and all of those things that are deeper rooted, or you're feeling, depressed and sad because of the divorce or the loss of a loved one. Guess what? You're normal. You're
Uh,
normal. I did a lot of work around grief and loss, especially with the onset of the pandemic, that 4 or 5 years ago at this point now. I did a lot of work in that realm. And and the first question I always asked was what was typically considered the cliche question, how are you doing?
mm,
And I asked that question with working with somebody with grief and loss, not to be cliche, but I did it on purpose because most of the time, and even with divorce and whatnot, most of the time folks would say, oh, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well at all. Tell me why. What is it that you're gauging that answer on? Well, I'm crying all the time and I've missed some work and I'm not really laughing and present with my family as I once was. And I say, great. Guess what? You're exactly where you should be. So I think step one always is, let's normalize that. Let's normalize what it is to experience a warranted emotion per the situation.
ooh. Let's normalize the feeling and the
Hmm.
emotion per the
Hmm.
situation.
Per the situation. And to give another Jayism to for us to chuckle on that too is you like these, right?
I do.
A lot of my clients have heard this many, many times throughout the time that we've spent together. And it's, if you stub your toe, you're going to say ouch. It's not that we stub our toe and we, think to ourselves, oh, how dare you say ouch, or what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you that you just exclaimed here and shouted and grabbed your toe? What's the problem? Why are you? No, we don't do that to ourselves. We stub our toe, ouch. Okay, that's a warranted reaction.
Right.
There's makes sense that you would have that exclamation in the moment. Okay, so now what can I do about it? I can elevate the foot, I could put ice on it, I could breathe through the pain,
Some of
you know.
us feel like we can't, though. Isn't that amazing?
Mhm.
Because I feel like that sometimes. It's just retraining my brain to say you can feel. You can be connected to your body. You don't
Right.
have to rush through to finish the thing that you were trying to get to before you stubbed your toe,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You
Yeah.
can stop, can sit down, and you can just take a second to feel what just happened
Right.
to you and the feelings that are in you and that are coming out.
Right. Right.
And that's not always easy.
And I think it brings really a relief to my clients when they hear me give that analogy, as silly as it is, because in that very moment, I can almost see it hit them. They go, oh, yeah, that is normal. Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah, I am okay. And I go, you're not broken.
No.
You're not broken because you're experiencing what you're experiencing. That's an absolutely normal reaction to what you're going through. Because I'm sorry to tell you this, but what you're going through is not easy.
But what makes us think that we aren't normal or that it is like, have you cracked the code on this?
Yes,
Because, well, please tell me. Tell us. We want to know.
I joke about that, but kind of yes. It's because when you get cold, you put on a sweater. It's stuff like that in our regular everyday type of lives where if I get cold, I put on a sweater.
Yeah.
If I'm hungry, I eat something. If I am thirsty, I drink some water. If, and just whatever. We have those kind of experiences that unfortunately we wind up overgeneralizing to, well, if I can make myself comfortable,
Right.
then most of the time, then why can't I make myself comfortable here?
Because we forget to treat ourselves well. because sometimes other people's are we feel we need to sacrifice our own desires for someone else.
Oftentimes, yes.
It's so powerful. So the 5 areas you say, there's some 5 things. There's like
Right.
personal life. How do you feel about yourself? How's your body feeling? Are you mostly healthy? Do you tend to get sick often? That's kind of, there's 5 pillars or 5 areas.
5 areas. Now, some people will kind of categorize these slightly different than I would. And what you actually spoke to was the physical life, physical. So the 5 areas that I speak to when it comes to creating change and addressing, depression, anxiety. I use the word turmoil to over encompass that. So what you mentioned, physical life. How do I feel about my body? And this isn't necessarily a body image kind of a thing, but it is like what you were asking. Do I tend to become, ill often? Am I kind of an under the weather kind of a person? Do I have aches and pains and ailments and things of that nature? So physical life, we have what I consider a little bit more straightforward professional life. How do I feel about the vocation that I'm doing currently? Is it fulfilling for me? Is it meeting my needs with the income and salary that I'm getting from it? Is it having me feel as though I am doing good work? So that's
Mm.
professional life. I talk about home life, and that's where it's in my description of it is, are you physically comfortable at your home? Do you have a place that you feel as though you can sit back and relax and totally shut down and unwind? Or are you feeling in chaos within your household? Home life includes your relationship satisfaction if you are cohabitating with your partner. And then we have social life. Are you out there, engaging in your hobbies? Are you seeing people that you want to see? Are you, interacting with other humans, right? That kind of a thing. Social life will include your relationship status if you are in a relationship but not cohabitating. So, what's the status? How is that going? And then finally is spiritual life. And I do include spiritual on this list because even those who are not spiritual at all, well, you got to that conclusion some way, somehow. And so the questions asking that you would ask yourself under that categories are you satisfied with that? Are you firm in what you believe or don't believe? Do you stand with your convictions in that? Or are you still kind of questioning some things, not really certain, that kind of thing? And so, those 5 areas of life, turmoil can come about, feelings of depression, feelings of anxiety, stress, whatnot, overwhelm. That turmoil can come about if any one or more of those 5 areas feels a bit off, not working for me. I don't like my job. It's allowing me to even pay my bills, let alone. And so, right. And so I'm feeling nervous all the time. Am I going to be able to pay my rent kind of thing? That's turmoil.
Hmm.
Okay. So those are the 5 areas of life. And that's another one of the initial places that I start. So we talked about, I start by normalizing why you're feeling the way you're feeling. But then we start by, let's examine those 5 areas. What do you think of those 5 areas could be contributing to the turmoil that you're experiencing?
Hmm. I love that. 5 areas: physical life, professional life, home life, social life,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would say, okay, so how could something in your life be contributing to in terms of turmoil,
Sure.
anxiety, depression, overwhelm, um, emotions, powerful big emotions?
Right.
How could those be contributing to a pain point or an experience in your life where you're feeling like it's less than desirable?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
very beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have, like, as we wrap up, do you have any like exercises? Is there a something that you could give to us to help
Yes.
begin?
I love this. And it's such a perfect segue for what you just asked me as well, because write that down. Write that down. I've even given this to some of my clients as kind of a worksheet is take those 5 areas of your life, okay? And on a piece of paper, make, one section over here is physical life, spiritual, et cetera, and make, 5 boxes or 5 columns.
Okay.
Okay. Spend some time in some quiet reflection. How am I doing physically? Am I a healthy person? Do I tend to get sick or injured, whatnot? What can I see myself? What opportunities do I have here? This isn't to judge. I always have to emphasize this. This is not to judge. Oh, can't believe I don't. Just no, no, no. Be aware. Take note. Is there anything in my physical life? Same thing for professional life. How am I feeling here? How am I doing? Just kind of give yourself a little bit of an assessment, a little bit of an evaluation on that. Okay, jot some things down. And for all of the 5 areas of life, what you're probably going to come up with is, I would really like to, address this social life thing. Okay, what is that? Get specific. Okay, so draw yourself your 5 squares,
Mm,
kind of jot down some notes on how you feel you're doing in those areas. And then maybe some of the home life is great. Awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
Yay.
Move on. All right. So, but where are some of those opportunities? And then from there, what can I do about it now?
Mm,
Do I need to pick up the phone and make a call? Do I need to seek out some advice? Do I join a club so that I can meet some people? What can I do about it right now? And just give yourself a couple of, easy enough to start with, actionable steps and go for it. Watch what happens.
wow. And then what that shows me is the boxes are the pool.
Okay, yes, yeah, I love this. Yeah.
And the willingness to begin to write down is like dipping your elbow in to see how hot it is. And then the question, what can I do about that? It's an acknowledgement of, all right, I feel like I could do something here, or I need something, or
Hmm.
it's pretty clear I'm reading it.
Yep.
What can I do? Well, now
Right.
your toes in. And then when you reach out to that person or you do that thing, now you're actually beginning to move towards an
Resolution.
resolution.
You're moving toward resolution as you're beginning to do that. I tell people that your anxiety will go down simply from creating a plan to address the cause of it, if you're able to. Now, there's other avenues, but okay. Even if you hadn't started on the plan, simply from putting a plan down. So, what you're doing by completing this exercise that I've just outlined here for you,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing? You're showing yourself, you're proving to your brain, wait a minute, I have more control than I ever thought I did.
Mm. Oh, I love it.
So you were talking about how it feels as though we're so out of control to even do a thing.
Yeah.
Sit down and do this exercise and watch how much control you actually feel like, I didn't even realize that. Try
I'm going to.
it. Good.
I'm sending this to all deism.
This is a Jayism. Yes.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation. I got to admit, I wasn't sure where we were going to go. I was like,
Yeah.
there's so many areas, and I'm
Right.
always curious about these kinds of conversations. And I'm glad we sort of camped out in this space,
Yeah, same.
and I really appreciate it. So, if there's one thing that you could say to our listeners so that to really kind of entrench them into new knowledge, what would it be?
New knowledge. Wow. I guess the main thing, I'm gonna sound very motivational speakery here to make up
Please.
my own word, but just prove it to yourself. Because even if you feel as though I can't do that, or what Jay is talking about, that's too big, too much for me, dip the toe and watch what happens.
Dip your toe.
Dip the toe and watch what happens.
Get going. And I would say you are proving to your brain that you have more control
Control.
than you think.
That's right.
And when I feel like I have control, I feel like I have some power. I feel like I
Hmm.
have some agency. I don't feel powerless.
Right.
And this is
Or
what you're saying.
hopeless or helpless or any,
Right.
yes.
Any of the lesses,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
that
Yes.
that's really how that works.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me and asking me all these wonderful questions and starting this dialogue with me. I think it's fantastic. So I appreciate it.
I agree. You have provided me with more learning. I always show how many notes I take because I
Oh,
think it's
wow. That's
important for
great.
you to see.
I love that. No, that's great.
I always treat the podcast like it's a mini masterclass.
I'm honored.
I love it. I absolutely appreciate and love that, we were able to have this conversation because you've got some really beautiful pieces here. So,
Well, I appreciate you asking me to join you today. I feel, like I said, it's an honor to be invited to the table. And so I do. I appreciate it.